I truthfully don't care what people on social media have to say about this year's playoffs, right? I think it's been extremely entertaining. We've seen defensive battles, offensive scoring outputs, and also teams accomplishing things that haven't been done in 20 years or so, right? Shout out to the Commanders for grabbing their first playoff win for the first time since 2005. But here we are now, the final 8 teams, the divisional round. And man, this weekend is only going to get better. But welcome to the Chill Taste Podcast, man. I'm your host, Darian. You can follow me on all platforms. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. I'm available, hopefully, still, if this is around, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter as well, or X. Same social media handle, Chill Takes. And also, if you're all listening to this on Spotify, please follow the podcast. If you're on Apple Music, rate this podcast 5 stars and also like it up as well. But I have a really great show to get into, man. A full docket of playoff previews and also going over some important topics that transpired in last year or in the wild card round, right? Last week's playoffs that I wasn't able to get into. But I want to hop right into things, right? Because I wasn't able to recap the Rams and Vikings matchup. The Vikings got destroyed. One of the better teams in this year's regular season, right? They had a chance at grabbing that 1 seed a few weeks ago, and of course they lost to the Lions on the road, and they dropped down to the 5th seed, and they had to go to a neutral site setting due to the to the LA fires going on the West Coast, and they had to play a neutral site setting in Arizona against a really good Rams team. And, truth be told, I thought the Vikings were going to go in there and handle business and win, not comfortably, but win in a very tough bout. And pretty much from when the time the game kicked off, it was a sign of defeat on the Vikings sideline, right? They never were able to overcome the hole they put themselves into. The turnovers came back to bite them, and of course, they ended up losing 27-9. And shout out to the Rams, because I thought this Rams offense wasn't going to be good enough to, put together a full 60-minute performance against this Vikings defense, given how much of a struggle the Rams have been these last few weeks leading up to that playoff game. And of course, the Vikings defense is playing world class. But it was pretty much the complete opposite, right? The Vikings offense that we saw struggle against the Lions to end the season showed up once again this past Monday. And the Rams defense that we've been seeing grow week in and week out put on a fantastic performance. And shout out to Chris Shula, man. He called a magnificent game. But we'll get into the Rams preview with the Eagles later on in the podcast. But I want to focus on one thing that transpired in the Vikings loss. Not only did they lose, of course, but Sam Darnold, once again in back-to-back weeks after having such a phenomenal season, performed really, really bad, right? And the question is, going forward this offseason, will he be worth a hefty contract extension? Now, we all know the Vikings have a rookie quarterback on the roster entering year 2, coming off an ACL injury. And we all know ACL injuries are not what they used to be, right? It's pretty much like a sprained ankle. JJ should be fine and be in full recovery by the time at least training camp rolls around, right? But the thing is, though, given the fact that Sam Darnold has such an amazing season, threw for 35 touchdowns, I want to say, or more, you know what I'm saying? Less than, I want to say like around 12 to 11 interceptions, somewhere around there, threw for over 4,000 yards. Jettas finished second in receiving. Addison had a solid season. The offense was just potent, right? I mean, this is one of the better offenses in football this past year. And, of course, the redemption story for Sam Darnold was beautiful to see. And we all knew that he had easily to grab one playoff victory for him to really, secure his bag this offseason. And unfortunately, he lost 2 playoff games. And yes, I consider that last game of the season a playoff game because that was for the NFC North Division title and also the 1 seed for the postseason in the NFC. And he performed terrible in both. So the question is he worth the hefty contract extension? And truth be told, I don't know if he's worth any more than what a Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, or uh, Matthew Stafford could be getting right now. And granted, Matthew Stafford's a bit older, so that's why I say around his contract range. I think if Sam Darnold is coming to the Vikings front office saying that, hey, I think anywhere between 30 to 35 million will be fine. But, of course, he's going to try to shoot for the stars. But if the Vikings can't come to an agreement with that, I don't see a world where he ends up being retained. And by the way, head coach Kevin O'Connell spoke about um, Sam Darnold during his end of the season presser. It seemed as if it was kind of like I'm going to remember this moment in my career for a very long time, seeing Sam bounce back, and I hope he has, a great career going forward, wherever it may be. It seems as if they're preparing for a potential leave, right? Because, in Sam's case, he could require or request anywhere north of 40 M's, right? And he's going to have a high bidding price because there's a lot of teams out there that are in position to grab a quarterback. The Raiders, Giants, whoever else is out there could definitely give him a huge payday. Steelers as well, right? And I'm not sure if you're Kwesi, the general manager for the Vikings, if it's worth dealing with that, right? Because like I said, he showed you that he may not be of playoff caliber. You know what I'm saying? Basically kind of what we all assumed entering the postseason, but we just had to see it to believe it, even after having a fantastic season. And, they can move on and, really lean on JJ McCarthy this upcoming year. And that's, of course, going to be a topic of conversation as the offseason continues to develop for the Vikings. But, regardless, though, hats off to Sam and his Vikings team. They were phenomenal this year. What happens going forward is going to be left to be known, left to be seen, because I do see a world where he can be retained for uh, uh, a decent price. But anything north of, like I said, what Baker Mayfield is currently getting, I think the Vikings could very much well let him walk. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's very unfortunate, but that's just the way of the business in the NFL, man. Like I said, like you have to grab at least one playoff game, and after arguably one of the worst playoff performances in history, especially this past weekend. I mean, it was him, Herbert, and Love. I definitely believe the Vikings are definitely in a situation where they're like, okay, we can potentially, move on from this. But let's get into the preview for this playoff, well, the divisional round, because I do have one last topic I want to speak on. I'm going to say that for the very end. But let's get into the Saturday matchup, beginning with what do we have here? We have Chiefs and Texans. That is the first Saturday game. Now, to recap, the Chiefs are coming into this playoffs with the 1 seed, so everything runs through Chiefs Kingdom, per usual, something they're very accustomed to, right? I think they've only had to go on the road one time throughout the playoffs, and that was last year against the Bills, and of course, they still got to the championship game. But the Chiefs, the AFC runs through Kansas City, runs through Chiefs Kingdom. So the Texans are coming to town, and it's pretty funny because this time last year, the Ravens were facing the Chiefs. I'm sorry, the Ravens were facing the Texans in the divisional round in Baltimore, whereas the Chiefs were facing the Bills in the divisional round in Buffalo. So basically, these teams have swapped opponents, which is very ironic, right? So let's get into this Texans and Chiefs matchup, right? What are the keys to the Texans grabbing this upset, right? Because, hats off to the Texans. They definitely came into the wild card weekend a bit of an underdog, right? I think they were favored to lose by at least, I think it was like +2.5, right, entering that game. The offense came out a bit flat once again, but they turned it on entering the second half, and they never looked back, and the defense played fantastic football all 60 minutes, made life really hard for him. Herbert and the Chargers offense forced turnovers, got to the ball carriers in the backfield, and of course, they've got pressures and sacked Herbert, and just made the game really difficult for him. So I think defensively, that has to continue to be the motto for the Texans to win this game. And I think they match up decently against this Chiefs offense, right? We saw them face off against each other earlier this year, and I forgot to put down the final score, but of course the Chiefs won. And the Texans got off to a decent start, right? I think the Tank Dell injury is what kind of killed the morale and the confidence for the Texans, especially Stroud. I think he was really out of it. We all remember him crying on the sidelines when he seen his partner go down with that, broken leg, or I forgot. I don't know what in specific he tore. I think it was either a broken leg or his ACL. But regardless, he had a lower leg injury, and Stroud was really shaken up after that. But I thought this Texas defense played relatively good. You know what I'm saying? They got some pressures. They did let Mahomes scramble a bit, but regardless though, they were able to, condense this Chiefs offense to a certain extent. I think they're playing better football than they were on Thanksgiving, right? I think even though they got, the doors beat off them against the Ravens on Christmas Day and, so on and so forth. But I think that Chargers game was a real confidence boost for them. And D'Amico Ryans is always going to have his guys going, right? I think Derek Stingley All Pro. He's going to follow. Rather if it's Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and I think Kamari Lassiter is going to be able to pick his poison on that Chiefs receiving core as well. It's all about what happens in the slot, and of course, who can really go out there and guard Travis Kelce with Jalen Petrie not being out there. So that's going to be something to monitor. But supposedly the Chiefs are potentially rolling back out Humphreys, DJ Humphreys, I want to say, to play left tackle and moving Joe Thuney back in the guard. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, especially with Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter coming off the edges for the Texans defensive line. So definitely something to keep in mind if they really go through with that starting lineup. But yeah, the defense, I have it in my notes. I mean, they must continue to create chaos, create turnovers, and just try to jumble up and make things hard for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes offensively, which is really hard to do, but it's possible given that this Chiefs offense has been up and down throughout this season. Offensively, though, that has been the Achilles heel to this Texans team this year, right? This is why they're not able to be in that championship contention, in my opinion, as a legitimate threat, right? Of course, they've dealt with their injuries, of course, with Nico Collins early this year. You lose Stephon Diggs for the rest of the season, and of course, Tank Dell. But even prior to those injuries, the offense with Stroud and Bobby Slowick and the rest of those guys, it didn't look as potent as it did last year, right? I felt as if the offense was leaning too much on Joe Mixon at times. And of course, Mixon's a reliable player you would lean on. He's obviously one of the best offensive players, but I feel as if for the Texans to win this game, not only does the defense need to come out there and create chaos, but the offense has to get up to a quick start, quicker than they did last week against the Chargers because they came out slow. Stroud looked very bad against the Chargers defense up until the third quarter, but even then he still has some rough moments. I think the best when the Texans were at their best offensively, it was when Stroud was getting the ball out quick up the seams, on the out routes, check downs and whatnot, just getting the ball out of his hands as quick as possible, getting the ball into Nico's hands, and not relying too much on the run game. As crazy as it sounds, I think this offense is better when the ball is in the quarterback's hands, right? But the thing is, though, what receivers are you going to lean on offensively, right? Because Spags is going to do a phenomenal job of keying in on Nico Collins. And I think Nico Collins had one of his lesser yardage performances this season against the Chiefs offense, even with Tank Dell going down. But I expect him to be better, of course. They're going to get Dalton Schultz involved. I think Dalton Schultz had a really big game against the Chiefs that day. The Chiefs give up a good amount of yards to tight ends this season. So I think Schultz is definitely going to be vital. And who's going to be the third guy to step up, right? Will it be Joe Mixon on the backfield? Will it be a John Mechie? Will it be an Xavier Hutchinson or Robert Woods, right? Someone has to be able to step up alongside those other two playmakers in the passing game because I don't know how effectively Joe Mixon will be in this matchup. As for the Chiefs, though, get off to a hot start offensively and make the Texans play from behind because I think if you can do that, Texans can't keep up with you guys. I'm not worried about the Chiefs coming out slow. They've been the one seed plenty of times throughout this dynasty, right? They understand how to come out of those 1 week buys, right? The bye weeks throughout the first week. Now, of course, we've seen in past the Chiefs get out to down 24 and made that a magnificent comeback against the Texans, a few years ago. Of course, I think that was like one of the first championship rise for the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, though, I think the Chiefs come out, fighting and ready to play football. But for Spags, I think a master class isn't required defensively. It would be nice, of course, but I think the best thing is that he just make Stroud hold on to the ball, right? Confuse him defensively, send exotic pressures, and of course, blitz, because this offensive line in Houston is still one of the worst in football. And I think if you generate pressure rushing, just have your cat blitzes coming off the edges with your corners and safeties and confusing with the two high shells and stuff like that, I think you can really confuse Stroud and force some turnovers and really potentially put this game away early. But I think it'll be close because the Texans defense will keep them in this matchup. I think the Texans end up losing, I want to say 28-17. Chiefs walk out on top, and I think it'll be a good win for the Chiefs as they prepare themselves for another AFC Conference Championship appearance. Now, moving on to this Lions and Commanders game, man. I mean, this game is going to be fun from a standpoint of just watching the Commanders play football again, right? They've been the team of destiny throughout this entire season, right? I mean, this team was 4-13 last year, second overall pick, drafted a franchise quarterback, brought in a new head coach and general manager. I mean, no one thought they'll be here right now with a 12-5 record in the second round of the NFL playoffs. I mean, that is just a hats off to their organization because they're only going to get better, you would think, right? But I think for them to win this game, not only do they need to continue to be that team of destiny, but I think Jaden has to continue to play his style of football, right? He was fantastic against the Buccaneers in his playoff debut. They'll need that again from him because Aaron Glenn and his defense, even though they're missing some pieces up in the front seven, their corners are coming back healthy. I want to say Carlton Davis should be playing this matchup, right? You're going to have Brian Branch out there in the back end alongside Kirby Joseph. Your opposite corner is going to be Terrion Arnold, who's playing better football as of late. He did end the season off pretty well. We're going to see if he can, continue that stride come playoff time. Amik Robertson, it's going to be a very tough defense, tougher than that Buccaneers defense for sure, right? So the thing is for this offense in Washington, right? I think Cliff Kingsbury and JD5 have to continue to do a good job of playing ball control first and foremost, right? You cannot just willy-nilly give the ball to Ben Johnson and that Lions offense multiple occasions throughout this game, right? Because they're going to destroy you. Your defense can't keep up, unfortunately, right? So play ball control. And one thing I noticed about the Commanders and the Buccaneers matchup, and also throughout this season, do a really good job of time of possession offensively, but also keeping the down and distance manageable, right? Rather if that's, JD hitting the quick reads, running for, 3-4 yards, each possession, right? Staying within the chains and making it third and manageable, right? They don't get too many times. You don't see this Commanders offense too many times in third and longs, right? And that's what Aaron Glenn will love to see, right? He wants this Commanders offense to be 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 9, because they don't have the personnel, respectfully, to convert those third downs time and time again. But if you find yourself 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 1, they're going to convert those majority of times throughout this matchup, and it's going to kill time of possession and also keep the ball out of your potent offense's hands, right? And that is exactly what Cliff Kingsbury in the Commanders offense, that is going to be their bread and butter for success. Now, defensively, I think the biggest thing for Washington, they have to continue to find ways to create turnovers, right? Stay within striking distance, right? Of course, you're going to get beat with some deep shots. You're going to get beat on some, big time plays that Ben Johnson can draw up. But how is your red zone defense? I think one of the best things about this Commanders defense so far this year is that, throughout this entire season, is that they're one of the better red zone defenses out of football. And I think that's key because the Lions are one of the best red zone offenses in football. So you have to find ways to force field goals and just hope that you can grab a turnover or two, which is very possible because we've seen Jared Goff throw 5 picks in one game, right? We've seen, the Lions offense come out a bit sluggish at times, especially we witnessed that in that Bills matchup. But, the Commanders have to force turnovers, find a turnover or two, and continue to keep the game within striking distance. I think offensively for Detroit, the biggest thing is coming out fast, and I'm really interested to see how they do that because this is a bit of unfamiliar territory for them, right? Yes, they were dominant throughout this entire season, right? They won a playoff game last year, and they got up to a really hot start against the Niners on the road last year in the NFC Conference Championship. But in their two games at home against the Rams and Buccaneers, their offense got off the sluggish starts. And I wonder how it would look now entering the playoffs off of 1 week bye, something they never experienced before. This core, at least, this team coming off of 1 week bye, right? Will it affect them? Because we've seen countless times outside of the Chiefs, and even the Chiefs at times, but they had such a potent offense like the Lions do now. They were able to overcome those obstacles, but you have times where a team is the 1 seed, they get that first round bye, and they come out sluggish and they can't find themselves out of it, right? So I'm really interested to see how they come out offensively. But you're getting David Montgomery back, which is huge, right? And I think you have all the personnel to put up 40 points in any given game. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for this Lions offense. Ben Johnson, those guys, Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Monter St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, the whole entire offensive line come out fast and knock this team out early because, like I spoke about plenty of times on my TikTok page and also earlier on in my first two podcasts, this Commanders team is a team of destiny, and they are ready. They are ready. And if you leave them hanging around, it can come back to bite you. As for the Detroit Lions defense, Aaron Glenn, you have to find ways to make this rookie quarterback uncomfortable. I know he is poised, cool, calm, and collected under pressure, but you got to find ways to generate pressure regardless of the situation, right? You just can't go out there and play man, time and time again, or just line up and play zone because he can dot you up. You got to be able to generate pressure with exotic blitzes, sending out, linebackers, and also, tackling in space is most important, right? Because this is a college type offense. They're going to run bubble screens to extend their running attack because they're not really effectively with the run game, with Brian Robinson kind of taking a step back this last month or so. And of course, contain JD5, right? Make him beat you through the pocket. Now, of course, we all know he can do it, but don't let him get on the run and make plays with his legs because that is a sign of the disaster. A sign of disaster for you, this team defensively. So, but yeah, man, I think it's gonna be a great game. I like the Commanders to win, though. I think they win. I want to say 31-17, roughly around the same score of the Chiefs and Texans. I think it'll be 31-17 or 31-21. I think the Lions do come out on top, though. And, it'll be an unfortunate end for this Commanders team, but, man, the sky's the limit for them because I think next year they'll be back better. They'll be back even better, I will say, right? So moving on to the Sunday games, we have the Rams and Eagles to start off. And, I want to talk about this Rams team because I spoke so highly on them to begin the podcast. They dominated the Vikings big time, right? Chris Shula had an amazing performance defensively, and they're going to need that once again. But I want to speak on this Rams offense because I'm still not feeling it, right? I think they got to a hot start against the Vikings, right? They got to a 7-0 lead, and after that, things got a bit fuzzy. And outside of the turnovers, they only scored, I want to say, one additional touchdown, maybe two more. But I felt as if it was just one additional touchdown. Could be completely wrong, though. So, but regardless, though, they looked better offensively, but it still wasn't that Rams offense we're accustomed to seeing. I think Puka Nacua had a big game, of course, right? Matthew Stafford was efficient, took care of the football. But I think the Rams have no chance of winning this matchup unless Cooper Kupp is involved. And when I mean involved, not just 2 catches for 40 yards. I mean, he needs to have at least 5 to 6 receptions for close to 100 yards. He needs to be matched up total in the receptions with Puka Nacua, right? I know Matthew Stafford has this infatuation and this one-dimensional style with Puka Nacua right now, but Cooper Kupp needs to be involved for this Rams team to put up points and for them to have a chance in this game. Because I feel as if that's when they're at their best when Cooper Kupp's involved. Now, of course, these two teams faced off against each other early this year. And it was a close game at moments, but of course the running attack went ballistic, right? Saquon Barkley had a career day, and it reflected in the score, right? They won. The Eagles won 37-20, but this is a different defense, right? So I will say I don't believe that the performance by Saquon Barkley was fluke, because it definitely could happen again, right? But the biggest thing is defensively, I think Chris Shula has to be able to dial up a game plan that is, of course, stopping the run, but also stop the run or contain the run enough where Jalen Hurts has to beat you. And I say that because Jalen Hurts, outside of that Super Bowl game he had where he still kind of fumbled the game away in a sense, but outside of that Super Bowl, 57 performance, he has not had that playoff game yet, right? I think if you look at his playoff stats, they've been solid, right? I think he's been carried a bit, not carried, but he's been doing his job. But I think for the Rams to win this game, you must contain Barkley and make Jalen Hurts beat you, because the whole offense, even though he's been off a few weeks because of the concussion, but he came out looking rusty, of course, right? I thought anytime you have A.J. Brown with only 10 yards in a playoff game or any game at all is a sign of bad news, right? It's a bad thing. And I think Kellen Moore is not the best play caller when it comes to dialing up passing concepts and stuff like that. I feel like that's a very weakness of his. And, I think that's been a reason why this Eagles passing attack hasn't been as good as it should be. But if you're Chris Shula, like I said, you got to make Hurts beat you, right? Contain Barkley better than you did last time. And, make Hurts beat you with his arm. Not saying he can't do it, but I just want to see it. All right. I just want to see it. And I think it could happen. But regardless, though, I want to see it. As for this Eagles offense, you play through Saquon Barkley until they can stop it, right? I know the message is for Chris Shula is to make Jalen Hurts beat you, but if you're the Eagles and you're Kellen Moore, you got to get Saquon Barkley involved early and often, because like I spoke about already, the guy had 258 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns last time, or 255 and 2 touchdowns. It wasn't a fluke. He can do that again. So you get Barkley involved early and often, and you do it until this Rams defense can show you otherwise, right? That's the biggest thing I can say. So, and defensively, if you're the Eagles, you continue to play your brand of football, right? I think this defense is the most complete defense in all of football. They're going to play great once again. They can get out there with their front seven, really their front four. Not having the Kobe Dean is going to be an issue, but I'm not sure what the backup linebacker is, but Zach Bond can definitely hold it down. The cornerback play has been magnificent this year with Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and of course the safety play with Blankenship and Chauncey Gardner Jr. Chauncey Gardner Johnson Jr. But yeah, man, just continue to play your brand of football on that side of the game, and things should be fine. I think this Rams team wins again, and I could definitely see a score being really similar to what we saw earlier this year, right? 37-20, but I'm gonna say it's going to be a score of I'll say 27-14. Only because I'm not sure if this Rams offense can keep up, right? I feel as if they don't get Cooper Kupp involved, like they've pretty much not being able to do in prime time games, especially in big moments like this. That offense is going to get stale pretty fast. So yeah, give me the Eagles 27-14 at the crib. Now, as for the last game, and the biggest game, in my opinion, of this divisional round, because there's so much on the line with this game, right? You have the 2 MVPs battling out, right? You have 2 fan bases at their necks. They've been out their necks they've been at each other's necks the entire season, it feels like, right? And they want it bad. I know Josh Allen wants it bad. I know Lamar Jackson wants it bad, but these fans want it bad too, right? It's a rematch from earlier this year where we've seen the Ravens beat the mess out of the Bills in Baltimore, but this time is in Buffalo. Cold weather. Regardless, I think both teams will be fine. I'm not sure why that's even a topic of conversation for either team, right? Both teams are, in cold climates throughout their seasons, right? Especially during this time of year, they'll be fine, right? Especially Derrick Henry. He played in Nashville throughout his entire season, throughout his entire career. He ran the ball effectively in cold weather. It shouldn't be a problem, right? But what's going to be the keys to the Bills winning this game? Because I do believe the Ravens win, but let's talk about the keys to how Buffalo can win. I think Josh Allen has to play perfect in mistake-free, and even has some heroism to his game. He needs to put together an MVP performance. I think he needs to play more like the MVP than Lamar Jackson does to win this game, because there's such a talent deficiency on his Bills offense matched up against his Ravens defense. It's not even funny, right? We saw what happened earlier this year. They struggled big time. Now, of course, they've gotten better throughout the season in identifying their identity, right? They want to run the ball effectively. They want to get Josh Allen moving around in the pocket, making big time throws. Their running backs are getting involved big time in the receiving game, of course. You have Khalil Shakir, you have the tight ends, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Amari Cooper should have himself a solid day, you would hope, right? But even Curtis Samuel, right? But they have to figure out how they're going to be able to put up points offensively. Josh Allen has to play like an MVP. And I think Joe Brady has to do a really good job of scheming and manipulating an aggressive Ravens defense by running a lot of motion plays, right? That is his bread and butter this year, confusing defenses with motion. And I think he needs to be on his A game as well. So we were going to need to see an MVP performance by Josh Allen. And of course, we're going to have to see Joe Brady call one of his better games of the season. Defensively, right? As crazy as it sounds, and I know Lamar Jackson has been an amazing passer this year, right? I think it's one of his better. Is by far a career year from a passing standpoint, and also one of the best passing seasons we've seen in NFL history, right? From a passer rating and whatnot. But you can't let this run game get active, right? If you're the Bills defense, you have to let Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm. You cannot allow, and I know it's hard to contain both these two in the running attack because they're going to run the football. They're going to want to run the football no matter what, right? But you got to find a way to contain this running attack, because against the Steelers defense, they put up 300 total rushing yards. That is insane. You cannot allow that to happen if you want a chance in this game. And you have to find a way to contain that and make Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm, given the fact that you don't have Zay Flowers out there. You have Rashad Bateman. You have what's his name from the Bears? Anthony Miller from the Bears. He's out there playing wide receiver 4. Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman. Of course, you have the two tight ends of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. But you have to make Lamar Jackson beat you with the weapons he has on the receiving department, because it's not the ideal right now outside of Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, right? And Bateman, he's been, pretty consistent this year. But you can't let the running attack beat you, right? You can't Lamar Jackson beat you with his legs, or Derrick Henry get busy in the running attack. As for, of course, the Ravens, who I believe will win this game, defensively, you have to play suffocating defense like you did the first matchup, right? You have to, how can I say this? You have to put hands on the receivers, jam them, make them uncomfortable, right? Stop James Cook from getting involved, and make Josh Allen have to lean on his receivers. Because I don't know if these receivers still to this day, even with the Mark Cooper being there, when you even someone like Keon Coleman, who had a really solid rookie season, I'm still not believing their receiving core can match up against their DBs, right? You have Marlon Humphrey, all pro, playing in that nickel. He's going to line up against Khalil Shakir. You're going to have Nate Wiggins playing against, Amari Cooper or Keon Coleman, right? And I think they can pretty much shut those guys out the game. You're going to have Stevenson playing his opposite side. You're going to have the two safeties and Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton, right? Roquan Smith. I just think this Ravens defense has to suffocate the playmakers, and of course, just force Josh Allen to do some boneheaded Josh Allen thing, which is very much possible, right? He's definitely good for a turnover or two in this game, only because he's going to have to play hero football, right? He can't play if Josh Allen doesn't play hero football in this game. In my opinion, they don't stand a chance, right? He's not going to go out there and play methodical or not methodical, but conservative and check downs and stuff. Of course, he's going to take what the defense gives him, but he's going to take some chances if they're down. They're going to be down at this point in this game, in my opinion. They could be down 10-0, 7-0, regardless. He's going to take his shots, right? And you must take advantage of the moments he takes his shots, because those could be turnovers. I think offensively, like I spoke about, what the Bills need to stop, the Ravens need to pound the running attack, right? this season, it seems as if the Ravens have emphasized that we're not going to abandon the run. They did it at one point this year. I think it was against the Steelers, and they lost that game. But I think it was against the Browns too. 2 games they lost. They weren't emphasizing the run, but you can tell in that Steelers game in the wild card round, they will be emphasizing the run, right? And they should. You have Derrick Henry in your backfield. You can lean on him all game. You don't have to, but you have the combination of Lamar and Derrick. And of course, the Bills have, you know what I'm saying? They're solid to great defensive line that's really underrated, right? You have Ed Oliver, Gregory Rousseau, who's had a big time season, Von Miller as a rotational piece, Espinenza, right? Who else you got out there? Matt Milano as a linebacker who's back healthy, which he missed that game, so he's back. Teron Johnson's playing this game too, so he'll definitely be vital. And you have Christian Benford, so you have a good front. You have a great front seven. You have Christian Benford and Teron Johnson in the secondary, and of course, you have Matt Milano to really be the anchor and the captain, the quarterback of that defense. But the thing about it is, though, not only will you need to establish a run game to win this game offensively for the Ravens, but you also must attack those safeties. Now, I understand there's a feel-good story for DeMar Hamlin, and I think Taylor Rapp is a solid safety in this league, but they are not elite by any means. They can be attacked. They've been playing okay, but with the secondary back end of DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, you have to figure out how you can exploit that. I think Lamar Jackson can, given the fact that he's been such a great passer this year. So we'll see. And also, the biggest thing I'm going to look into this matchup is how Todd Monken can really take advantage of how aggressive the Bills defense could be in defending the run, because I think the biggest thing we witnessed in that first matchup is that the play action game was working crazy, right? The linebackers were getting suffocated. They were getting caught so deep in to the play action play that it left so much open and green area in the back end of the core secondary. So we'll see. I think the Ravens win this one in a close matchup, way closer than it was the first game. I think they win around the score of 24-20. I think it can come down to a Justin Tucker field goal, which is going to be really ironic given the fact that he's been pretty bad this year, collectively speaking, from his standards. And I've also, last time we've seen Tucker in Buffalo for a playoff game, he was bad again. And so was this entire Ravens team, right? The win got the best of them, but they understand what's at stake. And I think they come out on top and advance to the next round, to the conference championship. And I think the Ravens come out on top, man. And regardless, though, unless, Josh Allen in the loss or Lamar Jackson in the loss, if they play terribly, we shouldn't be viewing his quarterbacks any other way. But, I think the team that is most talented from top to bottom and has the better quarterback, I think Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen. They figure out and win this game in a close margin. So give me the Ravens 24-20, and that's how I like it. So for my for my divisional breakdown, I have the Chiefs over the Texans. I have the Lions over the Commanders. I have the Eagles over the Rams, and I have the Ravens over the Bills. So no, I don't have any upsets, unfortunately, but about this time of the year, you rarely see upsets. I think the last time we've seen a legit divisional upset was the Jaguars over the Steelers back in 2017, and you had the Vikings over the Saints with that Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs and that crazy catch from Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs. But it's a rarity you see divisional upsets, right? So yeah, man. I'm probably missing some, but that's the first one that comes to mind, I would say. So, but yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did see a divisional upset not too long ago. It was the Bengals over the Bills. Yeah, that's one thing about Josh Allen. He's a fantastic wild card quarterback, but when it comes to the divisional round, he struggles a bit. And I think that's the last time we've seen a Josh Allen favorite lose in the divisional round, which was against the Bengals, and Joe Burrow walked in there and took over. So I think that may be the last time we've seen a divisional upset. I could be drawing a blank on others, but that's like the first couple ones that come to mind. So yeah. But anyways, let's get into the last topic before I end this podcast. And also for those out there listening, thank you so much for listening to this pod, man. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, follow. And also if you're on Spotify, follow. Apple Podcasts. Like, comment down, rated 5 stars and whatnot. I'm a bit stumbling about words because I just finished a 8-hour night shift and it's 7:32 in the morning right now, so I'm a bit tired. But we got to pull through and knock out this last topic before I edit this and head to bed. So, anyways, last topic, and this is going to be a really not really passionate topic, but I want to speak on something that's been heavy in regards to how I feel about this particular coach. And I've been saying this for quite some time now. And I feel as if the media outside of myself, because I'm just a small content creator, but outside of myself have finally started to catch on to what's been going on with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I'll start off by saying this. I think Mike Tomlin is I think he's a phenomenal coach, right? In the grand scheme. I think he's top 5 in football. And I think he's definitely a future Hall of Famer. But we can't just keep ignoring the fact that even though he may be this phenomenal coach in the grand scheme and a future Hall of Famer, that there's a strong possibility he has been overrated these last 6 or 7 years during his time in Pittsburgh. I think it's time for a change. Will it be a change? No, right? But I think the Steelers and Mike Tomlin need to change the scenery, right? The Steelers have now lost their last 6 playoff games with Mike Tomlin at the helm, and 5 of those losses have been 5 straight one and dones in the playoffs. Recently being the Ravens, last year being the Bills, a few years ago being the Chiefs, Browns, and of course the Jaguars being his first one and done to start this streak. And they've also been outscored. They've given up 230 points in these 5 games or 6 games as well. Now, when you look at Mike Tomlin's record, he has a record of 183 to 107 and 2 ties, right? That's a really good win-loss record. But in the playoffs, he's 8-11, and he has 1 Super Bowl. Now, of course, it is hard to win in this league, right? It is hard to win playoff games. But when you are toggled as this magnificent head coach, the ultimate players coach, right? You can get the best out of any situation you're in. The ceiling raiser amongst all ceiling raisers. I think at least one of these games should have been a win, especially during the years prior where you had the killer bees, right? You had Big Ben, you had Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Martavis Bryant, right? You didn't have the defenses, of course, but you still had TJ Watt. You know what I'm saying? You still had Minka Fitzpatrick after those years, of course. You know what I'm saying? You still had Cam Hayward. You know, you still had really solid pieces defensively, but you still weren't able to find those wins. Now you look at someone like Mike McCarthy in comparisons, and I got this from Pick a Side. Shout out to the guys at Pick a Side Pod. You know, Mike McCarthy I think he's a good coach. He's not top 5, of course, but he's a good coach. He's a well-rounded coach. I think he's done some phenomenal things in his career, and he could be a future Hall of Famer as well, depending how things go. But he is primarily viewed as overrated. His record stands as 174 to 112 with 2 ties. He's 11-11 in the playoffs as well, and he's also a one-time Super Bowl winning head coach. Now, granted, he has had more talented teams these last, 4 years. He's been with the Cowboys, of course, before getting fired or parting ways, whatever Jerry Jones and they agreed upon. He's had, better offenses, better quarterback, better receiving cores, better defenses, so on and so forth. But he was still able to get playoff wins. He had his shortcomings, of course, against the Niners when they were favored to make a deep run. And he's never been to a conference championship since his days at Green Bay. But he's accomplished just as much as Mike Tomlin has these last few years, and yet he is viewed overrated, and he has more playoff success these last few years. So I think this offseason is a big offseason for Mike Tomlin, right? At some point, if the standard is standard, if, all these things, you are what your record is, you know what I'm saying? whatever the Mike Tomlin quotes are, if those things remain true in the facility of Pittsburgh, there has to be some serious changes, right? Rather if it's going out there, getting a legitimate quarterback that you can work with, rather if it's a free agency addition of a Sam Darnold, retaining Justin Fields, right? Moving on from Arthur Smith, grabbing some better receivers to play alongside George Pickens, or moving on from George Pickens because he may not fit the mold you want, even though he's a talent. But the immaturity at times can be a detriment to the team in moments, or getting better defensively by grabbing a corner in the draft. And I don't know. There has to be some call to order, right? Because this mediocrity can no longer go on anymore, in my opinion, right? Especially for a guy that's a lot of people in this league, in the sports world in general, right? For the NFL landscape, right? They view him as a future Hall of Famer, but at some point, man, you got to grab at least one playoff win, bro. I saw RC speak about on the Monday Night Countdown before the Rams and Vikings game, how he spoke about how, pretty much fans should be appreciative of Mike Tomlin, right? It could be worse. This is someone you need to stick with because he's a good head coach, so on and so forth. And he gave some analogy about how a woman can have a good man, but she may not like what certain things are going on right then and there, but overall he's a good man. And you have the women that don't have any men are saying, oh, you can leave him, girl, and you can really upgrade your entire life, right? You know what I'm saying? Leave him, girl. You don't need that man. If he can't fix that one thing, he ain't a good man. And he was saying, though, those girls that are saying that, that are unwedded and, hopping from man to man and so on and so forth, those women are considered the Raiders, the Jaguars, and so on, and the Jets of the world. But, you can say what you want about the Raiders. Of course, that team hasn't won a playoff game in a long time. You can say what you want about the Jets. I get that they haven't won a playoff game since 2010. But for the Jaguars, right, for a team that you want to say like that, where the Jaguars have just as many wins as Mike Tomlin does in the playoffs these last 10 years, I want to say, right? So, or last 8 years or whatever, whenever this streak has been going on. So, I get it that he's never had a losing season before, but at some point, man, enough is enough, right? I don't think Steelers fans are okay with some maybe, but a lot of them aren't okay with this. And I think he definitely needs to look himself in the mirror and really lock in this offseason to make some serious changes, rather if it's coaching staff, players, where have you, right? I mean, there needs to be some serious change because continuing this playoff drought is not good for an historic franchise, nor is it good for an image of a coach that is supposed to be and should be a future Hall of Famer. But anyways, man, that'll do it. I thank y'all for tapping into this podcast. I will be doing a recap this weekend, maybe 2 recaps because you have games on Saturday and, of course, games on Sunday. But regardless, though, I thank y'all for tapping in with me. Please make sure you are following, subscribing to the channel because I'm not sure what's happening on TikTok, man. So I'm trying to migrate to other platforms, continue this podcast. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, comment down below what your thoughts on about the divisional round, the playoffs, your thoughts on Sam Darnold's contract extension, and also your thoughts on Mike Tomlin. And also, please, if you're on Spotify, like the pod. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate the show 5 stars and also comment down below how you feel about the podcast as well. But until next time, man, I thank y'all so much for tapping in with me and rocking with me. Y'all stay easy, be blessed. That's it.